Unfortunately for the Philadelphia Phillies, they dropped the first game of a tough 6-game road trip out west. Last night was the start of it. First against the San Francisco Giants, they dropped that ball game 3-1, open up that 3-game series. They play the San Diego Padres. After that for 3 games right before the All-Star break. As I said, unfortunate loss for the Phillies, 3-1. It was tied 1-1 going into the bottom of the 8th inning. Ryan Kirkring took the mound in relief of Christopher Sanchez, who ended up having a very, very, very good night for the Phillies on the mound. Kirkring's been one of the Phillies' best relievers in a very inconsistent bullpen, to say the least, in 2025. Kirkring ran into some trouble there in the bottom of the 8th inning. He came in, as I said, during a 1-1 ball game. He hit a batter, then he allowed a single, then he hit another batter. So there was bases loaded. There was no outs, just a very tough situation in a tie game there late in the game. It was pretty much bound that the Giants were going to score at least one run. And then, unfortunately, he allowed back-to-back RBI fielder's choices. And off of both of those fielder's choices, they recorded just one out. So, drove in 2 runs, 3-1 ball game, which the Giants ended up winning 3-1. Only got 1 out there. Kirkring was replaced by Max Lazar with just 1 out in that 8th inning. Lazar recorded the final 2 outs to keep it a 3-1 Giants lead, but the Phillies offense were unable to do anything offensively there in the top of the 9th inning to even up the ball game and send it to extras or even take the lead. As I said, really, the Phillies offense was pretty quiet all ball game. They had just the 1 run. They scattered only 6 hits throughout that ball game. Just a really tough day there offensively for the Phillies. Welcome into Phillies Daily, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Kennelly. Make sure you guys subscribe for more Phillies content. As I said a little bit earlier here in the video, Christopher Sanchez took the mound for the Phillies in that series opener against the Giants. He did run into a little bit of early trouble, not really all due to his own fault, mostly because of the defense. There were some miscues there. I'll get to that in just a moment. He did get out of jams in both the 2nd and 3rd innings, allowing just 1 run with those 2 jams he found himself in because of some defensive miscues. So he was able to work around that. And then he ended up settling in. And really, after pitching a lot of pitches through the first couple innings, he was just very efficient, very dominant through the rest of the game. He was able to get through 7 innings, which at the time earlier in the ball game, if Rob Thompson, the Phillies manager, would have been asked if Christopher Sanchez was going to go 7 innings, he would have thought you were crazy. But he buckled down, and he got through 7 strong innings for the Phillies. He did allow 7 hits, 1 walk. He had allowed just that 1 earned run, and he had 8 strikeouts in those 7 innings. So another very strong performance by Christopher Sanchez, who's having another terrific season for the Phillies in 2024 after an all-star season last year in 2024. He really should have been an all-star again this year. He's not on the team. The only pitcher and really the only 2 players that the Phillies got selected were Zach Wheeler and Kyle Schwarber. Christopher Sanchez has allowed 2 or fewer runs in his previous 8 starts now, and he owns a 2.59 ERA through his first 18 starts in 2025. As I said, just a really great season by Christopher Sanchez, one of the Phillies lefties in that starting rotation. Just a great, phenomenal season for him. Now, back to the defensive blunders. The defense has been an ongoing issue throughout the 2025 season. You know, at shortstop with Trey Turner, he hasn't been great there. The outfield has had their mishaps all season long. A few other guys here and there in the field, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott here and there, even Bryce Harper at first. Just a lot of defensive miscues for the Phillies in 2025, and it was on full display in that series opening loss to the San Francisco Giants last night on Monday. The first came in the bottom of the second inning. There was 1 out, bases loaded. It was still a 0-0 game. The Giants were obviously up as the home team in the bottom of the 2nd inning. There was a ground ball hit to Trey Turner. Could have been a double play. Would have been tough to turn it just for the speed that the ball was hit and the speed by the base runners. But he ended up bobbling that ball at shortstop, trying to rush it to turn 2, get the ball to Bryson Stott at second base. They did record an out at second base, but a run did score. The runner was safe at first, so the Giants took a 1-0 lead. Chris, as I said, it would have been tough to double it up anyway, so the run most likely would have scored there anyway, but still a defensive miscue nonetheless. Christopher Sanchez was able to work around that, get out of that with allowing just the one run. It's a great job by him. And then he found himself in trouble again in the very next inning, in the bottom of the third inning. This time there were two defensive miscues there. First, there was a high fly ball to the shallow right field. Now, Bryson Stott, the second baseman, he was running backwards, trying to track it down. First of all, playing in San Francisco, especially in the outfield, a very, very tough place to play just because of the winds there. The ball, can just be traveling any which way there in the outfield. So just very tough to read them, especially when they're hit so high in the air like that. It can just be taken with a gust of wind there. So Bryson Stott, very hard to run back there and try to track down a high fly ball, as the second baseman running out into shallow right field. I played baseball for a very, very long time growing up. And as an outfielder, that's where I transitioned to as I got older. It's your priority, your job to take hold of those fly balls where, the infielder is running backwards and you're coming in. It's much easier for the outfield to make that play than the infielder. And Nick Castellanos, that should have been his ball there in right field. Who knows if he was calling it? I don't know who was calling it, whatever, but it should have been his ball, especially for how far back Bryson Stott had to travel to try to make that play. The ball ended up dropping. Nobody made the catch. And it dropped for a base hit. And then in that very same inning, Brandon Marsh got all turned around out there in center field on a hard hit line drive / fly ballish to deep center field. As I said, just very all turned around. He misplayed that ball. It ended up being a ground rule double, luckily for the Phillies, because if it had not bounced over the center field fence there when Brandon Marsh misplayed it and the ball dropped for a hit, a run would have scored. It would have been a 2-0 Giants lead there instead of 1. But it was a ground rule double. The runners had to stay at second and third. No runs scored. It was still a 1-0 lead. And then Christopher Sanchez, just like in the second inning where he got out of a jam, he got out of that jam by those two defensive miscues by the Phillies outfielders and Bryson Stott with no runs scored. So, great stuff again by Christopher Sanchez, getting out of that third inning and even second inning jam unscathed. The poor defense is just, you can't be doing that at the major league level because not only does that hurt your team, runs can score, put your team in an early deficit or even blow a game if the game is later on in a game, but it also forces your pitcher to throw extra pitches that they shouldn't have because you could have recorded it now. He could have got it out of the inning sooner. He could have gone deeper into a ball game, save your bullpen. Now, luckily, like I said, Christopher Sanchez was very efficient as the game went on. He was able to get through 7 innings, so he did help the defensive miscues there. But it could have, been a very short outing for Christopher Sanchez because of those early defensive miscues by the Phillies. The bullpen could have been wasted, which you never like to do in a first game of a tough series, especially on the road. So, just again, credit to Christopher Sanchez for buckling down and going those 7 strong innings. Unfortunately, wasn't enough because the Phillies did end up losing that ball game 3-1. But the defensive miscues must stop moving forward, especially on a playoff caliber, a championship caliber team like the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, shifting gears a little bit from last night's ball game to the farm system, the Phillies seem to be very reluctant. We've seen Mick Abel make his debut. He's a young kid. We've seen Otto Kemp get his opportunity up here as well. But the Phillies seem very reluctant to promote their top prospects, most notably their number 1 prospect, Andrew Painter, and their number 3 prospect, Justin Crawford, the outfielder. Dave Dombrowski, the Phillies president of baseball operations, as I said, seems very unwilling to promote Justin Crawford, even though the defense, particularly left field and center field, has been an issue for the Phillies in 2025. It definitely needs an upgrade. Max Kepler hasn't necessarily worked out on this 1-year, $10 million deal that he signed during the offseason. Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas haven't been able to secure a starting role, everyday role there in center field for the Phillies. Justin Crawford, he plays a lot of center field. He can play left field. He's a young 21-year-old kid. As I said, he's the Phillies' number 3 prospect. He was their first-round pick back in 2022, and all he has done is hit incredibly well throughout his minor league career. Dombrowski recently said, when asked about promoting top prospects, young kids, that It's got to make sense for playing time. It's got to make sense for that player to come up and play and not just sit on the bench. They need to get at bats. And unfortunately, for a guy like Justin Crawford, he's just not going to get that with veterans like Max Kepler and Brandon Marsh still out there, and obviously Nick Castellanos in right field. So even though Justin Crawford could potentially come in and solve the outfield issues, outfield problems that the Phillies have experienced all season long in 2025, we're most likely not going to see him anytime soon, barring anything crazy that might happen. He is having an incredible season in his first full season in AAA. He's batting .343 with a .416 on base, a .451 slugging, and an .867 OPS. He has 23 extra base hits, including 18 doubles. His speed is incredible. He has 26 stolen bases in 2025. As I said, his first full season in Lehigh Valley with the Iron Pigs. He has a .323 career batting average through 281 minor league games. As I said, all he has done is hit throughout his early professional baseball career. Now, Andrew Painter as well, obviously rehabbing from that Tommy John surgery he had a few years ago. He missed 2 full seasons because of that arm injury, elbow injury. He is their number 1 prospect. The Phillies did demote Mick Abel after he struggled through his last couple starts with the Major League club back on July 4th on Friday. It could have opened the door for Andrew Painter, who was originally expected to make his Major League debut at some point in July, but the Phillies seem to not want to rush their top prospect, Taijuan Walker. Instead, is rejoining the Phillies starting rotation with Abel sent back to AAA and Aaron Nola still on the IL. Painter hasn't necessarily been great in 2025 as he rehabs from his Tommy John surgery, but he also hasn't been horrible. He's shown a lot of great things. His fastball is electric. He gets a good amount of strikeouts. As I said, he was originally expected to debut in July. It still could happen, but right now it's really unknown when he will make his debut. He's a 22-year-old young right-handed pitcher. He's obviously the number 1 prospect, and all the Phillies fans want to see him in the rotation sooner rather than later. We thought it may happen, but we might have to keep on waiting with Dave Dombrowski seeming like he's unwilling to promote these top prospects really anytime soon. Shifting gears again, as we get closer to this July 31st trade deadline, it is July 8th now, so it is rapidly approaching. The Phillies are in the market for obviously bullpen help and could be in the market for outfield help as well. I've mentioned it already, been a weakness in 2025. And one of those guys that they could look into is Cleveland Guardians left fielder Steven Kwan. He's a 27-year-old left-handed thrower, left-handed hitter. He was a 2024 All-Star, so he has had success through his first 4 years in the major leagues. He's been a Gold Glover in the outfield in each of his first 3 seasons. As I said, this is his 4th season. He has experience at playing all 3 outfield positions. He's mostly played left field, but he can play center, he can play right. Obviously, the Phillies have a weakness there in left field in 2025 and center field as well. He's having a very good season at the plate with the Guardians. He's batting .297 with a .356 on base, a .415 slugging, a .771 OPS. He has 20 doubles, 1 triple, only 6 home runs. He's not a power guy, so that's not really, something to worry about. He's not really going to overpower you with his strength and power at the plate, but he is going to get on base. He's going to hit for contact. He has 29 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, so he is a little bit speedy there as well. Through his first 86 games in 2025, as I said, he's not a power hitter. He has just 31 home runs in 513 career games, his 4th MLB season being right now in 2025. He does have 2 more years of club control left. He's not going to be a free agent until 2028, so there's that. For a team looking for outfield help at the trade deadline, club control is always good for teams, so it's not just a couple-month rental, especially on a younger guy like Steven Kwan, just 27 years old. The Guardians could be sellers. They're 15.5 games out of first place in the AL Central. They're also 6.5 games out of an American League wildcard spot. They were just on a 10-game losing streak, I believe, before maybe a win last night, I think I saw. So they have been spiraling a bit as we near this July 31st trade deadline. And a guy like Steven Kwan could have a lot of suitors and could help a team trying to make a World Series push like the Phillies. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Phillies Daily. I'm your host, Mike Hennelly. Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe for more Phillies content right here on Phillies Daily. Hopefully the Phillies can get back on track with the win to even up the series against the Giants tonight. Another 9:45 start, so make sure you get some rest and watch the Phillies as you drift off to sleep. Again, thank you guys for watching, and as always, go Phils.